In this video, we're going to begin formatting the text that's in our brochure. We want to format text in a way where I have titles and subtitles and normal text and special characters that all help differentiate the content and help the reader understand what they're looking at a glance. We want to make sure the skim factor of this document is very easy to read so that certain important words pop off the page first. And then if the reader is interested, then they'll delve into the fine details. At this point, I can go about formatting data any number of ways. I could highlight a title that I want to have formatted. I could highlight a title, and I could make the changes up here. But that's a lengthy process, and it doesn't guarantee that every time I have a title that I have the same consistent formatting. One great tool that InDesign has is actually to set up character and paragraph styles, so that when you set up a hierarchy of text, where I say every subtitle or every title or every time there's normal text, it looks a certain way, InDesign does the hard work and basically applies those format features to those individual titles. So let's go ahead and do that. The first step is to go into Windows. Under Windows, you want to go down to Styles. Here I want to make sure that I have Paragraph Styles clicked on. So Paragraph Styles, or F11, basically, click on Paragraph Styles, and this dialog box shows up. Now paragraph styles and character styles are nested one within the other. And if you want, all you need to do is click on this dialog box and slide it over here to the panel on the right, and you'll notice that it's now nested here so that I don't have to worry about constantly going back to Windows and turning it on. However, if ever you accidentally click it off and accidentally close it, all you need to do is go back to Windows, back to Styles, back to Paragraph Styles, and here I have my nested toolbars, which I can just place here. Okay, the very first thing I want to define is I'd like to define what is my normal text. So right now I have the default, which is Cumbria. It's coming from Word, it's coming from the document. This is not the font that I want to use as my default. I want to be able to define it, and your client has specifically requested a sans serif font. And you may notice that the font here, Cumbria, is not a sans serif font. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to define a paragraph style for normal text. Now I'm going to go over here on the right hand side and I'm going to click on Paragraph Styles. Now you'll notice that right here I just have normal as the only one that's defined, and I can create new paragraph styles just by going over here and clicking on Create a New Style. But before I even do that, I want to define what normal is. So I'm going to double click on normal, and I'm going to get the Paragraph Styles Options dialog box open. One thing I really like to do is I always like to be able to preview what I'm doing as I'm working on it. And this preview here can be affected just by clicking on the checkbox next to the word preview in the bottom left-hand corner of this dialog box. You'll notice that there's a number of options here, and for every one of these options there's a set of parameters right here. Basically right now this style name is normal, and it's based on no previous paragraph style because it's the first one that we're defining. But in upcoming sections you could base an existing paragraph on an existing style. Let's take a look at the basic character formats for this particular item. Here it's set to Cumbria regular 12 points with a leading of 14.4 points. Let's go ahead and play around with this and make some selections that might make the document look different. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select an alternative font. You'll notice that when I made that change, because it's set to preview, I'm able to see what that looks like right over here on the left hand side. Go ahead and experiment and select a font family that's a sans serif font that you might want to use for your normal font, that is to say for the regular content within this document. Also go ahead and play around with things like font style. Sometimes you'll notice that you have more than one font style. You might see regular, bold, italics, and so on. In this case, this particular font only has regular. I can also play around with the font size. 12 points is really big, and I have an awful lot of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump this down. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to take a look at how it looks on the left-hand side while I'm working. Is this too small? Is it still legible? I'm actually going to go down to 9 points, and I'm going to leave it there until I have a chance to play around. I may decide to go in later and make an adjustment. At this point now, I can go and take a look at some of the other things that I can do to this particular normal style. I can go into advanced character formats, for example, and I can start playing around with the scale of it. I can go into indents and spacing and think about how I want the data aligned. Right now it's left aligned, but you can see that there are a number of different options. I can also indent. Watch what happens when I click on the indent and I increase the indent just slightly. Then I can go into things like tabs and paragraph rules. You have to really play around and decide what you want to do with your regular text, and there's a whole bunch of options. I can also go into character color. So if I wanted to, I could say that all of my regular text is not black, but rather this corporate blue. I'm going to go ahead and see what that looks like, and I'm going to say OK. And here I have my document. Now, that blue hardly shows. It doesn't even look like I made a change. However, it might look more substantial when it's printed. So now I have a standard font, and I have my normal defined. I'm just going to close this off to the side so that I can take a look at my document. You'll notice that when I made these changes, everything kind of shifted around. I have now much more fitting on here than I wanted to. For example, this was page 1 and it went right to the end. Now I have Contact Sheridan College's Pilon School of Business, and I know that this was supposed to be on page 6. Now I know that because I studied the document at length before I started. You may not know that, and so it's really helpful to use this viewing tool that also is available to you in InDesign so that you can see where text flows from one dialog box to the other. One way to do that would be to go to View, and in here you want to go into Extras, Show Text Threads. This is going to allow you to see with an arrow from one dialog box to the next where content is moving. So when I click on Show Text Threads and then I click on Selection Tool, you'll notice that it goes from this text box to this text box, and that this text box moves from there to here. I can adjust this text box, and I can go around and I can make adjustments so that the content goes back where it's supposed to go, just by making that sheer change. All right, so now I've defined and I've changed and modified my first page. I'm going to need to do the same with all of my other text boxes, but I don't necessarily need to do that right now. What I do want to do right now is I want to start thinking about how I'm going to format my titles and my subtitles. So now I'm going to go back in to my paragraph styles, and I'm going to create a new style. I have normal. I want to go over here and I want to create a new style. Now I've got paragraph style 1. That's always going to be the default name for any new paragraph style that you create. To change that, all you need to do is double click, and then you have this new paragraph style created. Now let's say, for example, I wanted this new paragraph style to be called title. Now what I want to do is I want to go in here and decide whether or not I want it to be based on my normal paragraph style, which means I could take normal and I could go back into paragraph formats and I could make changes based on the original selections that I had made. I have the same font family, the same font style, and the same size. But in this case, what I might turn around and do is I might turn around and change and bump up the size. Now I can't really see what I've done here because I didn't select anything that's going to be title. So now before I continue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight an area, how to get your Bachelor's of Business Administration, and I'm going to click on the word title. Now this is defined as a title, and anytime I go to make changes to this particular title, it's going to affect anything that I've qualified as a title. For example, how to get your Bachelor of Business Administration might be my title, and then I might have another title. Here, I might call this title. All right, let's go into title and make some changes. All right, so what I think I'd like to do is go back into character formats, and now what I'd like to do is I'd like to play around with the leading. See how the leading is now all of a sudden becoming narrower as I decrease the size of the leading? I could then also go in and change advanced character format and change the scale. I could change hyphenation. That has to do with where words are cut off, basically. I could play around with justification, bullets and numbering, character color. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Go ahead and experiment. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another style here, and this time I'm going to call this subtitle. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this area here. I'm going to make this my subtitle, so I'm going to go ahead and click on here. Paragraph style 1, once again, if you want, you can leave it there. Double click, and I'm going to call this subtitle. And now, just to make it easier, I'm going to base it on, not normal, but my title. So it's going to be similar to my title, except now I'm going to make it maybe slightly different. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into basic character formats. I might decrease the size a little bit. And I might go into different things like underline option, or I might go into character color and change it to the orange. You can do any number of different things. So now you can start to see how your document can easily be developed from one section to the next. And of course, as you're building and as you're making changes, you'll notice that from here to here, as I made some adjustments, the 3.0 GPA to qualify, which is supposed to go down here, I know that it's flowing from here to here, so I want to make those adjustments into my document. I can also start thinking about removing some of these hints, like have logo present on the title page. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start playing around with this document. Now go ahead and experiment and create a font format for normal, a subtitle, and a title.